Story 1. You feel comfortable talking to them, and you find yourself sharing things with them that you do not typically share. Story 2. Many people believe the best way to understand others is to remain silent and just listen. That is incorrect. You can learn a great deal by initiating casual conversations, asking thoughtful questions, and adapting your communication style so people do not feel judged, or that you have an ulterior motive beyond casual talk. Showing a little indifference can help convince others that you are not seeking anything from the interaction. This is why women often distrust persistent or clingy men. It signals they want something more than conversation, even if they deny it. Most people deeply desire connection but are wary of others' motives. You need to balance showing interest with a degree of indifference. The context in which a conversation starts is usually more important than what is said. To understand someone's fears, desires, and motivations, observe how they react in different situations. Notice what stresses them and what comforts them. Pay attention to when they change the topic. How someone initially reacts through body language or facial expressions to a question often reveals more than their verbal response. For example, if you ask an acquaintance how their day went, they may not share personal details. However, if their demeanor suddenly changes negatively and then quickly returns to normal, it may indicate recent difficulties in their life. Experiencing emotional abuse can increase your ability to spot subtle behavioral cues. Skilled manipulators also notice these signals, but the key difference is the presence or absence of empathy. Sometimes, interactions become a subtle competition. For instance, if an emotionally perceptive woman asks her unfaithful husband about an affair, he may need to be a skilled manipulator to anticipate the question and conceal any fear. Some people are able to do this. Story 3. You can summarize all these answers as not being glued to their phone and listening intently, both completely normal human behaviors. Story 4. It is not a sign you can observe, but I have a close friend who is incredibly accurate at predicting which people in our social circle are untrustworthy, even when no one else sees it, sometimes for years. She has never been wrong, and I have known her for well over a decade now. She detects drama queens, cheaters, drug problems, everything. Story 5. Some people who grew up with unpredictable parents become highly observant of microexpressions. When combined with empathy and a good memory, they can ask insightful questions at the right time or detect unspoken emotions or intentions of danger. This ability can be both a blessing and a curse. Story 6. My aunt's ex-boyfriend used to give me the biggest creep vibes. He was very smart and loved to talk, but it just felt like he was a total sociopath. One night, when I was stuck with him at a hospital, I thought maybe I'll just act super interested in whatever he's talking about within reason and see what he says, especially the stuff he was acting nervous about. No judgments, just responded with a lot of "no way," and kept asking questions like he was the most interesting man in the world. I later learned this is a great exercise for anyone you want to know more about. People love to open up and share a connection. For the next hour, he talked about mercy killing animals, choking out random homeless people because they tried to lie to get money from him, and even attacking his ex-wife to make her seem crazy so he wouldn't lose his kids. I told my aunt later what he had said and that I would not be anywhere near her while they were still dating. She continued to date him for several months after. After they broke up, within a year, he was accused of molesting both of his daughters. He sent my aunt a video of him killing a dog. He made his next relationship's son kill his pet chicken for a barbecue. Just a sick man. After all this came out, he said he was taking a hunting trip to the woods, and later they found some of a corpse with his belongings on it on his property, almost completely eaten by animals. It is presumed he shot himself in the head at the thought of going to prison as a child molester. Mostly, I assume he is dead, but part of me wouldn't put it past him to kill someone and cover the body in his clothes and something else. I wouldn't put anything past him. Listen when people want to talk. Story 7. Also, the fact is you probably will not know until they give you a strange, spontaneous comment about someone. Then later, you find out somehow that they were the one to give you the hint. People good at reading others do not mention that they are good at reading people. Many do not even realize it. They observe, and that does not necessarily mean sitting silently without talking. Story 8. They perceive your mood or thoughts before you have even said anything. They ask very specific questions. Not intrusive, just remarkably accurate. Also, observe how quickly they adjust. You are excited, and they remain calm and grounding. Story 9. Someone good at reading others does not necessarily have to listen to what you are saying. That is just someone who listens well. To read someone is more than just that. Much more. I do not know what this thread is about other than projection and conjecture. Story 10. When someone says something about you that you have never told anyone, but it is eerily accurate, you realize they are truly unique. Story 11. People who are highly intuitive, very observant, and understand people dynamics usually do so at the expense of knowing themselves well at times. Story 12. They make accurate predictions about people, sometimes to the surprise of those who have known the person much longer. For example, they might not like your stepmother, who they have encountered a few times, while you have known her for years and do not have problems with her. Then your stepmother starts becoming problematic or unlikable. They make smart decisions about who their friends are. They make smart decisions about who to talk to or spend time with. Story 13. I had a friend who was extremely good at reading people. He once told me, "If I want you to be my friend, you will." I believed it too. He could be friends with anyone. Story 14. The real and only signs are being able to share some very deep thoughts with strangers and be perfectly at ease. Also, avoid some people for no apparent reason, though in the end, there is one. Story 15. The people I know who are good at reading others tend to understand information just from body language, movement patterns, and current circumstances. It is difficult to keep such people from knowing information about you. They will know if you are on leave from work just by your demeanor, or if you respond a certain way, they will know you are in a relationship. That is a sign that someone is good at reading others. These are the same people who tend to notice red flags in others. Story 16. Why are people acting like the quiet person in the corner who reads everyone? Honestly, talkative and witty people can be just as sharp, if not sharper. Especially if you have been through experiences, you learn to read a room quickly. I talk a lot when comfortable, but that is how I catch things like your tone, reactions, and little shifts. Sometimes I joke or tease and people laugh, but deep down I have already noticed your insecurity. Wit is not just funny. It is survival and a subtle emotional radar. Story 17. All the experts at reading people commenting here. Meanwhile, they barely leave their house and rarely interact with strangers regularly. Story 18. Children and animals like and trust them. They are constantly aware of the receptivity levels of others. Story 19. Have you ever felt like you really connect with someone and think you are close, but then realize that you are mostly doing the talking? They know a lot about you, but you hardly know anything about them. Story 20. The truth is you will have no idea until they use that information against you. Play poker with anyone good, and you will be amazed. Story 21. They perform well in job interviews and are successful in obtaining scholarships. They are skilled at playing poker, especially since math and memory also contribute to this ability. Additionally, they excel in sales, particularly if they are introverted, as their success relies less on charisma. Story 22. When they ask many questions to people, especially based on observations, you usually don't answer, and I see now you're is everything all right? Since you've been dating your partner, I've noticed what's up? I've noticed when you feel like you usually do and you've been doing a lot recently. How come? Never in a way that sounds judgmental, always evidence-based, and as a result, people are often willing to open up and elaborate more without fear of being judged. My friends do this, and I try hard to learn from them. Story 23. Emotional intelligence. They seem to understand people they have only had one conversation with. Most importantly, they can easily predict their behavior. My boyfriend is one of these people. He is a bit of a social butterfly, although he calls himself an introvert. He has probably talked to hundreds or thousands more people than I have. Every single time we make a new friend, he knows exactly what that person's deal is and what they will do. So far, he has always been right. I always want to give people the benefit of the doubt, but he has really never been wrong about someone. I am positive that if I could ever get him on a reality show that requires social intelligence like Survivor, he would easily win. Plus, he is charming and handsome, so people are more trusting of him. I am sometimes worried he can see through my nonsense, but I am hoping love is blind. I am just a bit dysfunctional. Story 24. I can tell from a different perspective that I read people very well. I've had this skill since childhood, likely because I am slightly autistic, and it was my way of connecting with others. As a teenager, I used it to pick up girls. Before approaching one, I would observe a few sentences, behaviors, or patterns and build a mental model of her. Teenagers usually do not have complex personas, so it was fairly easy. Once I had enough information, I would craft a persona to match hers, tell a few jokes that fit her vibe, and suddenly we had so much in common, like soulmates. It worked like a charm. Over time, though, I realized I did not have a personality of my own. I was using this skill to connect with people, adopting 20 different personas, none of which felt truly mine. When I recognized this, I tried to stop or at least tone it down. It is not something I do intentionally. It just happens. My boss recently told me she is impressed by how quickly I can adjust and read the room. At work, most people like me, and I genuinely try to be friendly. I have no bad intentions. I know this might sound like I am some kind of psycho, but I am not. I have never wanted to harm anyone. Story 25. Well, my best guess is that this happens when someone seamlessly controls the conversations and always seems to say the right thing. Usually, this feels natural on the surface, but when you think about it, they are just directing everyone's attention where they want it. This is probably really hard to spot in everyday situations, but think of how public speakers, comedians, and similar professionals read and manipulate crowds. See if you can spot this in a normal conversation. Story 26. Heck if I know. I do not know what reading people means, and I probably could not do it, so recognizing it is out of the question. You almost certainly are not one of them if you are on Reddit, though. Story 27. Trauma from emotional abuse causes them to pay attention to minor details others miss, making them seem like they are expert detectives or skilled at sneaking around and hiding receipts. Story 28. One of the biggest signs that someone is exceptionally skilled at reading people is that they do not show it. People who are truly skilled observers mask their awareness and let others underestimate them while they quietly collect insight. They downplay their intuition and pretend to guess poorly. They also ask or say things that are psychologically strategic. Story 29. They manage to find your weaknesses even though you were certain you did not tell them anything. You do not know until they use it against you. Or at least I do not, but it could also be because I always look for the good in everyone until they show me enough bad. Story 30. When they ask a question you were just thinking about but never said out loud, or when they casually describe your deepest insecurity like it is some passing observation, they do not overpower you. They dissect you gently and surgically, and you somehow thank them for it. Story 31. I was caregiving for my father at a facility for cancer patients when this short older man walked up to me and said, "Hey, I see you're from California." I had never seen or spoken to him before, and I was raised in the South, so you couldn't tell I'm from California by my accent. The man proceeded to tell me he knew my car, license plate number. I was driving a family member's car from Los Angeles, and how long I had been in my car in the parking lot the night before. I didn't press him too much, but I questioned him with a very no-nonsense tone. It turned out he was just an oddly observant Jehovah's Witness who remembers minor details about people he passes by. It was creepy at first, then quite impressive once I learned his background. I called him a retired spy and James Bond's lost uncle for the rest of his time there. I wish you the best, Tony. Story 32. They have experienced abuse. Understanding people well is essential when your life depends on it. Story 33. They sit and observe and know everything that is going on around them. Things you did. Things not even you yourself know that you did. Story 34. They spend a lot of time alone, but you are strangely comfortable telling them everything about yourself and did not even notice doing it. Story 35. Their occupation. For example, professional poker players spend a lot of time studying body language books. Story 36. I think everyone has a different opinion of what it means to read someone. My personal opinion is being able to predict behaviors when someone is placed in particular situations. You can make a hypothesis and test it. Very few people can be read. People are unpredictable and they surprise you, which is the most fun part of being human. We are surprising. Those people who can be read usually have patterned behavior and little to no self-awareness. They are predictable because they do the same thing repeatedly. People who are incredibly manipulative seem to be good at reading others, but they are not. They are just really good at taking advantage of kindness and have no issue with betraying social norms. Unless you can accurately predict someone's behavior, then you are not reading them. You are just judging them. Story 37. They are completely relaxed in social situations. You are only stressed in social situations if you are nervous about what people think about you. Story 38. I get along with everyone, including people most others dislike or fear. Unfortunately, I don't think this is reading people but rather being non-judgmental and accepting people as they are. I am also willing to be in the moment with them and share that experience without bias. I am less about reading people and more about letting them tell me who they are. I get much more about a person from just being with them than from nonverbal cues. However, you do learn their nonverbal signals and can tell what they are thinking from across the room. There are stereotypical cues you learn from experience that often apply well to complete strangers. Common traits and behaviors reveal a wealth of history about a person. Posture, motions, the way they talk, what they care about, where they invest time and effort, what annoys them, their tolerance towards stressors, and more all communicate many things in just a second or two. But this comes from experience, and it is somewhat inaccurate because you are applying blanket stereotypes to more complexity than they can represent. You have a 20% fit, and the other 80% you need to learn from them. Story 39. Chase Hughes would help you out here. Look at a person's face and talk to them for 5 minutes, and you have a lot to work with depending on if and how you want to influence them with your behavior. Look at the eyes and the skin towards the ears, or the wrinkles on the forehead and how deep they go. Try stretching those two areas while you talk to someone, and you will most likely have a positive effect in conversations, especially with people you meet for the first time. Story 40. As a counselor in training and a halfway decent tarot reader for extra money, half woo, half not, it comes down to being present and listening beyond just the words. Seeing through the superficial aspects of a person and noticing. Some people are very good at saying without saying and noticing without noticing. Also, generally life experiences or childhood trauma can make people good at reading others, often called empaths, because they had to figure out their safety in relation to the unread. Slamming cabinets when angry. A sigh of annoyance after finishing a conversation. Small things, often paired with bigger things but not always, that left that person feeling unseen and vulnerable without any real emotional safety. So, they had to become good at reading the energy and the emotions of a person. However, I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all description. I'm more confrontational with my noticing and okay with the discomfort, whereas other people are a bit more aloof about it. Story 41. When you say dangerously good, you are talking about the manipulators, the sociopaths and narcissists of the world. The signs you are dealing with one of them are the usual. They like you too much, too soon. They shower you with attention. They like all of the things you like. They seem to have a lot of dramatic conflicts in their past with terrible people they no longer speak with. Story 42. People who connect the dots quickly. If the dots do not connect, something is wrong and defenses should be up. If the dots connect, that person has integrity and can be trusted. Someone else is trying to present themselves as humble, but they wear expensive shoes and hang their diploma on the wall. The dots do not connect. Someone is trying to appear courteous and thoughtful, but then speaks negatively about people when they are not around. The dots do not connect. Someone appears loving and has a lot of family and friends in their life. The dots connect. Story 43. You feel very close to them, comfortable sharing anything, and consider them a close friend. In retrospect, you realize you know almost nothing about them beyond the surface. Story 44. I am not sure why you would associate reading people with being dangerous. If anything, The ability to read people and look below their surface presentation should be considered a valuable skill in self-protection. Story 45. They do not think they are good at reading people, they just seem to know things about them. Anyone who believes they are good at reading people is not, because they are overthinking it. Story 46. If you know any people who are a bit narcissistic, they do not like people with good reading skills because they cannot manipulate them. Therefore, such people are quite useless to a narcissist. Story 47. They are very good with small children and pets. They quickly understand the situation. They can tell you what children and pets are feeling or what they mean in a short time. They allow others to speak even if the conversation is not reciprocal. Story 48. A history of childhood trauma trained them to read and manage their parents' emotions. Story 49. When someone can accurately predict what another person will do or say, it shows a high emotional quotient and an understanding of what to expect. Story 50. To be good at reading people requires making accurate deductions. A sign of being good at reading people is the ability to piece together tiny key details about others and make an accurate claim. For a fictional example, look at how Lalo Salamanca interacted with Gustavo Fring in Better Call Saul. Gustavo was a professional when it came to hiding his true emotions and intentions. He masterfully did this with most of the Salamancas and even with the Drug Enforcement Administration, but Lalo was the only person who saw past his facade, played along knowing that Gustavo would anticipate his moves, slowly gathered more information on Gustavo's hidden plans, and finally struck when the timing was right. Story 51. A sign someone is dangerously good at reading people is when they can call out your true feelings or intentions before you even say a word, as if they are tuned into your vibe on a whole other level. It is equally impressive and a little unsettling. Story 52. I feel that as long as you have some basic level of empathy and are not constantly talking about yourself, listen, and try to get to know the person you are talking to, then that is all you need to be good at reading people. Another way to describe that is being a decent human being. Story 53. When someone is rude to another person shortly after meeting them, especially when it is completely out of character. I had a good friend who was rude to a coworker the first time he met him, to the point where I had to pull him aside and ask why. He said he just had a weird feeling about the coworker. 3 months later, the coworker was fired for stealing solid-state drives from laptops. Story 54. The ones I have seen who are best at it are those who are really good at hiding themselves in a situation, usually by mimicking behavior. The quiet and observant ones are isolated because it looks like they are trying to learn. Distracting someone with their own behavior has always taken me much further than I expected. Taking an interest in something they have no knowledge of to get them to talk about it is effective. Story 55. That happens to me a lot. Professional contacts often share deeply personal stories about themselves. I frequently find myself at work dinners with two people, at least one of whom I have not met, who ends up sharing a deeply personal story that their coworker of more than a decade has never heard. Story 56. They rarely let people in because most people are unpleasant. A few months go by, and the person they were not fond of turned out to be very difficult, and everyone is surprised except them. Story 57. I worked for a summer camp that hired a hypnotist. The owners and leaders were too wary or scared of him after meeting him, so they had me and another counselor pick him up from the airport and take him out to dinner before the day of the show. During dinner, I asked about his talents and skills, and he told me that he was mostly self-taught. The next day, I got to see him perform while working a room full of people he had never met before. One of the kids who was hypnotized was from my own group that I was in charge of. I got to see the effects of hypnotism and ask questions to one of the people hypnotized afterward. The sign that he was dangerously good at reading people would not be apparent to anyone who did not know his work. I can see why someone skilled at this would keep it that way. It reminds me of a book I read on card counting. The author made the point that getting caught card counting was not a sign that other authors on the same subject were good card counters. Story 58. I was running a booth at a job fair a few years ago when a pair of young women approached to ask about the available positions we were hiring for. I went over the available positions and suggested opportunities one thought would match their personalities. One of the women asked me how I could be so sure these were jobs they would like. I responded by saying her name, Neither of them had set it up until this point. I have been doing this for a long time and have gotten pretty good at making these kinds of quick judgments. She looked at me with her mouth open and asked how I knew her name. I told her that I am trained to notice little details when I first meet people, and her necklace with her name on it was a clear giveaway. Both women applied for the jobs I suggested and were successful. One of them met her future husband at the placement, and the other was promoted to a management position within 2 years. It turns out anyone can be good at any job if you place them in the right environment. Story 59. Talk less, listen more, and actually listen. My father was a salesman for many years. Cars, cocaine, and the things he stole to pay for the cocaine. He could sell snow to an Eskimo and knew it. He didn't teach me much, but his gift of gab has been a useful skill. Shut up. Let the other person talk. Smile, validate, and remember what they say to you. People love to talk and share, especially about themselves. Just keep giving them the chance and be interested. Eventually, you'll have enough information to know things they haven't told you. Most people aren't as special as they want to be. They generally fit loose molds and conform to broad standards. You can take the information they give you and extrapolate some pretty good guesses about what they don't give you. Occupations can be very telling. Types of people gravitate toward types of careers most of the time, and while they are still individuals, they will all share some traits. Keep letting them feed you that information, and you build a mental Venn diagram of where two things overlap. There is a good chance that this overlap is a part of the person as well. Story 60. I like to let people reveal themselves. It's not that I'm good at reading people. It's that I listen to them and read between the lines. I also like patterns. Story 61. It is very easy to understand people. Ask open-ended questions and then listen. Most people are open books. Story 62. How intensely do they listen when you talk? I find that they closely listen to every word and almost stare at you when you are talking. Story 63. If they are friends with every type of person and you find yourself opening up to them more easily than others. Story 64. If you confront someone and they plead, please do not confront me. This is how I know I have leveled up to a new social skill level with the ability to be the most charismatic person in the room and understand everyone with ease. This is why I started the Central Intelligence Agency. Nobody can do it as well as I can. Every time I have confronted someone, I can read them like a book. They almost never want to be confronted, but it is too late. I am locked in. Nobody can read people as well as I can. This is why I created the Earth in 7 days. I attribute it to my unmatched charisma. Story 65. In order to understand people, you need to ask questions. No one is a mind reader. A professional will better understand what the answers to the questions mean. Everything else is just assumptions. Story 66. From what I am told, growing up in an abusive household can make you very good at reading people. You learn quickly to read people's moods through body language. This is because you have to read your abuser and then adapt your behavior to theirs before they even know you read them. Dad walks in the door and tosses his keys on the table instead of placing them on the hook. He is quieter than usual but walks with louder footsteps. Mom's head turns too quickly when he walks in the door. Story 67. My therapist says I am good at reading people because I was abused as a child, and it became a survival skill. Story 68. Mirror personality is the ability to shift between social groups with ease. A person who can change their entire demeanor between people in the same conversation seamlessly understands and adapts quickly. This is not just about someone who knows their friends well. It is about someone who almost instantly makes a stranger feel comfortable and familiar. They attract you by being just enough like you to make you think you like them, but not enough to seem like a copycat or someone seeking attention. This is not a skill that can be learned, and it is impressive to watch. Story 69. It's funny how many men think that being the strong silent type is what makes a person good at reading people. But I bet at least half of those men would believe the stripper actually likes them. Seriously though, career strippers are expert people readers. That bubbly woman is definitely playing you, but you'd never know because she read you like a book. What makes someone good at reading people is being engaging, asking questions, picking up on subtle tones and voices, paying attention to body language, and entering conversations with genuine curiosity free of any internal biases. You cannot read people if you are prejudiced, judgmental, or have a narrative already spelled out in your head. If you do that, you'll just take any cue as confirmation of your own ideas and won't absorb any real information. Sitting back and silently watching without practice in gathering information on how people work is just being a judgmental person telling yourself stories. If you aren't going out and doing any work to figure out if those stories are true, then you aren't reading anything other than your own imagination. Story 70. There are two kinds of people who read others. The dark ones listen too much, master reading physical cues, shifts, and reactions, then exploit you with that knowledge. The light ones can feel and see your energy, spirit, or darkness, along with your physical cues, shifts, and reactions. They may appear to be observing you, but do not seem to want anything from you. Story 71. My dad has a special skill. One clear sign is how effortlessly he adjusts his personality depending on who he is talking to. Not in a fake way, but so subtly that everyone feels comfortable around him without realizing why. He picks up on micro-expressions, tone shifts, and body language so well that he can sense when someone is holding something back or feeling uncomfortable, even before they notice it themselves. Sometimes the most remarkable part is how he can get me to open up or agree to things without feeling pressured at all. Story 72. Oh man, my old coworker had the best trick for this. He once came up to me when I was a 22-year-old shy know-it-all and said, "You are a lot smarter than you let people know," and walked off. I barely knew him, but I thought he was very observant. It turns out he is just good at knowing what people want to hear and tells it to them. It is weird mind trickery, but that is a good way to get people to think you are good at reading them. Story 73. As someone who thought they could easily read people when I was a young adult, I have come to realize it is not hard to pretend for short periods of time. It is the long access to people's behavior that causes you to understand their patterns, but that does not mean you can really read them. People are complex and do not understand themselves most of the time. Story 74. No one is good at reading anyone. It is all made-up nonsense to explain human interactions. The only thing people get good at is being manipulative and seeing manipulable traits in others that are then exploited for personal reasons. Why else would anyone read someone but to get from point A to point B? It is psychopathy, pure and simple. Understanding human behavior is one thing. Acting on that knowledge is manipulation. You envision a future state of a human's behavior, and while that can be predicted to some degree, it is an anxiety response that people develop as a protective mechanism. Story 75. They spend a lot of time in dental and medical offices, so they are well versed in shallow culture from reading all those people magazines. Story 76. Good questions. You cannot make judgment calls based on appearance or from a distance. Everyone has something they really love and want to talk about. The best way to understand someone is to find out what they love. Anything else is just stereotyping. Story 77. If they pay attention to you, ask leading questions, and let you continue riffing on topics far beyond the notion of conversational balance, that is the sign of someone keenly trying to evaluate you. Whether or not they draw the right conclusions is anyone's guess. Story 78. They can make you think you are the only one who is figuring them out while they are actually manipulating the conversation to reveal everything about you. Story 79. When they answer the question you did not ask, just the one you were thinking. Kind of cool, kind of terrifying. Story 80. I have a few good friends. They are not always liked by everyone at first or ever, but I know they are good to the bone. Then, I have very few friends that people usually say, "Oh my God, they are the best." Usually, I get a strange feeling about those people and I end up being right. Story 81. They make you laugh in situations where they need to introduce the required idea. When you laugh, your consciousness narrows and becomes vulnerable to such introductions. Story 82. Observe more than talk. Make others feel comfortable and share secrets beyond what their questions require. However, when they meet their match, they dare not approach the other party because they can sense the danger coming toward them. Story 83. Dangerously good? They are usually the sociopathic types in chief executive officer jobs. They can read people very well, prevent others from reading them, and use this knowledge to gain an advantage over others in the room. Story 84. They spend a lot of time alone because reading other people's energy can be overwhelming. They are also very mindful of what they consume. Food, television, people, and certain forms of entertainment can be draining. Story 85. I will be darn. It just so happens that the same behaviors that signal high intelligence are exactly the same as being dangerously good at reading people. Wild stuff. Story 86. It always surprises me when I am on the train and people ask me to watch their belongings while they use the restroom. Most of the time, this happens in a very quiet part of the train. It has happened several times now with suitcases and purses. Sometimes I wonder if they are very careless or just good judges of character. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.